He wrote 5,000 words that nobody fully understands. Yet they've guided millions for 2,500 years. Around 500 BC in ancient China, an old man named Lao Tzu was leaving civilization. He'd had enough of society, politics, and people trying to control everything. He was heading to the mountains to disappear, but a guard at the border stopped him and said, "You can't leave without sharing your wisdom." So Lao Tzu sat down and wrote the Tao Te Ching. 5,000 words about the Tao, the way, a force that flows through everything. A path that leads without forcing. A truth that can't be spoken but must be followed. And the core message was simple but profound. Stop trying to control life. Stop forcing outcomes. Stop fighting reality. Instead, follow the way. Move with it, flow with it. And everything you need will come naturally. Here's the problem with how most people live. They're constantly fighting against the current of life, trying to force things to happen their way, demanding that reality match their expectations, pushing, striving, controlling, manipulating, and they wonder why they're exhausted, why nothing flows, why everything feels like a struggle. It's because they're going against the Tao, against the natural way things want to unfold. Lao Tzu watched this pattern everywhere. People working harder instead of smarter. Leaders trying to control everything and creating chaos. Individuals chasing happiness and pushing it further away. All because they didn't understand the Tao. They didn't know how to follow the way. So what is the Tao? That's the tricky part. Lao Tzu says right at the beginning of his book, the Tao that can be spoken is not the eternal Tao, meaning you can't really explain it. You can only experience it, point toward it, describe what it's like. But the moment you try to define it precisely, you've missed it. But here's what we can say. The Tao is the natural order of things, the way reality actually works beneath all the human drama and forcing. It's like a river flowing to the ocean. The river doesn't struggle, doesn't stress, doesn't plan. It just follows the path of least resistance. And it always reaches its destination. That's the Tao, the natural flow of how things unfold when you stop interfering. Lao Tzu teaches that humans used to follow the Tao naturally, like animals do, like plants do, like rivers do. But then we developed thinking, planning, trying to control, and we lost touch with the natural flow. Now we're constantly in our heads, overthinking, overcomplicating, forcing, and we've become the only creatures on earth that regularly work against our own nature. He says, the Tao does nothing, yet nothing is left undone. This is confusing at first. How can doing nothing accomplish everything? But what he means is that the Tao doesn't force, doesn't push, doesn't try hard. It just allows things to unfold according to their nature. And by not interfering, everything happens as it should, more effectively than if you tried to control it. Think about a tree growing. The tree doesn't force itself to grow, doesn't stress about growing, doesn't have a growth plan. It just follows its nature, responds to its environment, and grows naturally. That's following the Tao. But humans, we make goals. We create pressure. We force growth. And half the time we damage ourselves in the process. Lao Tzu would say, be like the tree. Follow your nature. Respond to your environment, but don't force. Don't overthink. Just let yourself unfold naturally, and you'll grow better than any amount of forcing could achieve. He also talks about Wu Wei. This is one of the core concepts of Taoism. It means doing without doing, or action without force. It's not about being lazy or passive. It's about acting in alignment with the Tao, taking action that flows naturally, instead of forcing action that fights against reality. Imagine you're swimming. If you fight the water, you tire quickly. But if you work with the water, if you find the current and move with it, swimming becomes easier. You're still acting, still moving. But you're doing it in harmony with the water instead of against it. That's Wu Wei. That's following the way. Lao Tzu watched leaders try to control their kingdoms through force, through strict laws and harsh punishments. And he saw that it created resistance, rebellion. The harder they pushed, the more people pushed back. But the leaders who ruled with lightness, who didn't try to control everything, who let things unfold naturally within certain boundaries, they had stable kingdoms, because they were following the Tao, working with human nature instead of against it. He has this line: govern a country as you would cook a small fish, very gently. What's he saying? Don't overdo it. Don't flip the fish constantly. Don't poke it and prod it and force it. Just gentle heat, minimal interference. Let it cook naturally. And it turns out perfect. But if you mess with it too much, it falls apart. Same with governing. Same with life. The less you force, the better the outcome. Here's another key teaching. The Tao is like water. It flows to the lowest places, takes the shape of whatever contains it, has no agenda, no rigidity. And yet nothing is more powerful. Water carves canyons, shapes landscapes, overcomes everything hard and rigid, not through force, through persistence and flexibility. Lao Tzu says, be like water. Go where you're needed without pride about it. Adapt to circumstances without losing yourself. Flow around obstacles instead of crashing into them. And over time, you'll shape your world more effectively than any amount of force could. Most people do the opposite. They're rigid. They have fixed ideas about how things should be. And when reality doesn't match, they suffer. They force. They fight. They exhaust themselves, and they wonder why nothing works. It's because they're being like stone when they should be like water. Stone is strong until enough pressure breaks it. Water can't be broken. It just flows. Lao Tzu also teaches about knowing when to stop. He says most people ruin good things by not knowing when enough is enough. They achieve success and want more. They get what they need and chase what they want. They reach a good place and push for a better place. And in the process, they lose what they had. Nature knows when to stop. A tree grows to its proper size and stops. A river fills its banks and flows naturally. Animals eat until satisfied and stop. But humans, we always want more, and that wanting destroys what we have. The Tao teaches contentment, knowing when you have enough, stopping before you push too far. That's wisdom. That's following the way. Now, let's talk about how this applies to your life. Because you're probably forcing things right now. Fighting against the Tao without realizing it. And it's making everything harder than it needs to be. Think about your goals. Are you forcing them? Pushing so hard that you're exhausted and getting nowhere? Or are you following the natural path? Taking aligned action without forcing? There's a difference. Forcing feels tense, stressful, like swimming against the current. Following the Tao feels flowing. You're still working, still acting, but it doesn't feel like struggle. It feels like movement. If everything in your life feels like struggle, you're probably forcing. You're trying to make things happen through willpower alone. But Lao Tzu would tell you to stop, step back, feel for the current, find the natural path, and move with it instead of against it. You'll get where you need to be faster and with less exhaustion. Or think about your relationships. Are you trying to control people? Make them be who you want them to be. Force them to change. That's fighting the Tao. People have their own nature, their own path. You can't force them into your vision, but you can flow with who they are, accept their nature, and let the relationship unfold naturally. Some relationships will deepen, some will fade, but forcing doesn't help either way. Following the Tao does. Or think about problems you're facing. Are you attacking them head-on, forcing solutions? Sometimes that works, but often the Tao shows you a different path, a way around, a gentler approach, a patient waiting for the right moment. Water doesn't break through rock by force. It finds the cracks and flows through them. Be like water. Find the cracks in your problems instead of battering against their strongest points. Lao Tzu also teaches about silence and stillness. He says, the Tao is found in quiet, not noise, in stillness, not chaos. Most people are constantly in motion, constantly thinking, constantly doing, and they lose touch with the way, because the way speaks quietly. You can only hear it when you stop making so much noise. So practice stillness. Not as meditation necessarily, just as pausing, as slowing down enough to feel what's natural, what's flowing, what wants to happen without your forcing. That quiet knowing is the Tao guiding you, but you can't hear it if you're always rushing, always pushing, always in your head. Here's the ultimate teaching. The Tao doesn't need you to believe in it, doesn't need you to understand it. It's already there, already flowing. Whether you follow it or fight it is up to you. But following it makes life easier. Fighting it makes life harder. That's just reality. You don't have to become some spiritual master, don't have to understand ancient philosophy. Just notice when you're forcing and when you're flowing. Notice when life feels like struggle and when it feels natural. The struggle usually means you're going against the Tao. The flow means you're with it. So choose flow more often. That's following the way. Lao Tzu left civilization to follow the Tao in solitude. You don't have to do that. But you can bring the Tao into your daily life by forcing less, by flowing more, by trusting the natural unfolding instead of demanding your timeline, by being like water instead of stone, by taking action that aligns with reality instead of fighting against it. The way is already there, quiet, constant, guiding. You just have to stop fighting it long enough to follow it. And when you do, life stops being such a battle. Not because it gets easier, but because you stop making it harder than it needs to be. Subscribe for more ancient wisdom.